Hello, and welcome back to the Travel and Beyond podcast with me, Daisy Ayres. In this week's episode, we are joined by a very special guest as I'm joined by Darren from Average Joe Down Under. Darren is an expat that has been living in Sydney now for 10 years, and Darren joins me this week to speak about his migration journey, living in Sydney, and how and why he started up his page and website, Average Joe Down Under. Darren shares so much useful information on his website. His blog really helped me in the early days when we were starting our migration journey. And from his blog, I then started following his Instagram account where he shares just so much about life in Australia. So it's so good to have him on and have a chat and hear his side of the story. So without further ado, let's get into the episode, and I really hope you guys enjoy it. So welcome to the Travel and Beyond podcast, Darren. Thank you so much for coming on. It's great to have you. And yeah, I don't know if you want to do a bit of an introduction to the listeners.
Hi, well, hello everybody. I'm Darren, obviously from Average Joe Down Under. So I'm basically been living in Australia for a little bit of time, and I thank you for asking me to come on and share my side of the story for maybe a little bit different. Obviously, you're at the start, and
Yeah.
thank you very much for having me on.
No worries. It's great to have you. And like I just said to you before when we were chatting, I like to have people on that are at different parts of the journey to kind of tell their story. And everyone's story is so different as well, isn't it? So I like to hear,
Yeah.
Different people's experiences. And I think it's helpful for people listening. I do get a lot of people listening actually that don't want to move to Australia, but they just enjoy listening to people's experiences.
Yeah.
Firstly, like a bit about you. So how long have you lived in Australia?
Okay, yeah. So, and actually, just what you said, like that is totally the same for, I guess, my podcast too. People like just to listen to people's stories, and
Yeah.
I think we just resonate with what people are going through because not everything is as it seems on social media, and then like
Mm-hmm.
real life is totally different.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously I've been here a while. I've been here since I came in 2010 on a working holiday visa. I only
Yeah.
lasted like 7 or 8 months before I had like an epiphany that I needed to sort my life out. And then I came back to the UK, and then I worked for 3 jobs to actually come back as a student in 2012. And then so obviously went from student to PR over
Mm-hmm.
those last, I think it's like 12, 13 years now.
Yeah. So how did you do that? Because I know a lot of people go over and stay on the student visa as just a way to extend their stay. How did you get from the student to the PR?
Well, back in 2010, British passport holders didn't actually still had to do the regional farm work type of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
whereas now that's just gone past 1st of July there. So if you are listening and you're going to go over working holiday and you've a British passport, you're sweet for 3 years. By
Yeah,
the way,
so lucky.
yeah. So obviously I didn't have that opportunity, and I didn't really want to do like farm work because back then it was just farm or regional work. It wasn't classified as regional. It was still farm work, and I
Yes.
just didn't see myself doing that. And I kind of had that epiphany, as I said, and I realized that I wanted to go home and study. But
Mm-hmm.
once I actually got home, I went to interview at a Bristol University for my course, which was teaching, because I'd already done an undergrad. Unfortunately, they cut the course because of the financial crisis that was still lingering at that time, because that's 2010. It wasn't
Mm.
really much longer. And then obviously, once they cut the course, I decided, like, what am I doing with my life? Like, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And my local uni in Belfast did not do the course, so I was kind of stuck. And I just decided one day I woke up and was like, I'm going overseas to go to uni. That's it, done. And I don't know why. I just decided on coming back to Australia. I think I had my own sort of like, I guess it was in my mind, kind of thinking I could go here, but I didn't
Yeah.
really look into it until then. That took maybe about 6 months to get organized, and then I spent the next, like, obviously you apply a year in advance, so
Mm-hmm.
you had basically a year and 3 or 4 months to kind of get yourself like with money, and that cost a bomb. So if you ever come and study internationally to Australia, it's not cheap. But
No.
it was, yeah, it was crazy. But it was a way for me to get into the country again, not on working
Yes.
holiday. and I didn't really know. Back then, I came with no like just whatever. Like I'm just going to go study and see what happens. I didn't expect to stay, and I didn't know there was any other visa to stay. But as I
Yes.
kind of was here on a student visa because I was a skilled worker, I just kind of talked to a few people and looked online and realized I could actually stay if I studied one more course that was related to my previous course, which was a graduate diploma in education secondary. And I could do the primary version, cut out half the credits, pay half the money, still get a visa, and be eligible for PR straight away after. So
Wow.
once I knew that, I was just like, right, that's me. I'm going to do that. So I ended up studying for a second year, which was 2013. And I literally got the diploma in December and had the PR by February. So it
Oh
was quite
my
quick.
goodness. Yeah. So that was like the best decision you could have made to, although like you say, it was expensive, to go over
Very.
there. That has literally that one decision changed your life, didn't it really?
Yeah, and it cost 30,000 for the first year was probably about $18,000. Then next year was about 12 because it was less credits. Um,
Yeah.
so it was very
Wow.
expensive. So I did three jobs before I came. I worked up and paid for probably at least 3, 4, 5 months ish, and the
Yeah.
rest I had to work out while I was here.
Yeah.
And I had a little bit of help from home, but obviously it was not enough to cover the whole 2 years really or at all.
Yeah. And you're only allowed to work, isn't it? Something like 20 hours a week or something when you're on that visa.
Yeah, it was. I think it's now 25 to. You can work 25 hours during term time, think, and then for like full time whenever you're not in like
Yes.
education. But you're but back then it was 20 hours, so and it was very strict. Like all the businesses didn't want to employ you if you were less than 20 hours, so it was kind of, I think it was
Yeah.
a whole different situation back then. But yeah, it was kind of scary at times. I didn't like have food in the fridge, and I've never been like that. I've been very comfortable in my life, and that was very not scary time, but it was probably like your student days where you were like eating one meal a day and like eating cereal
Yes.
for lunch.
Which probably was even harder though because you were so far away from home.
I mean, it was
N-
hard, but I actually found it actually character building then. When I look back on it now, I sort of see it as like it was kind of good because didn't know the value of a dollar. I didn't know the value of a pound. I
Mhm.
was very much like spend, 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 and it was like
Yeah.
it kind of needed to happen to like curb my spending.
So where were you living when you were studying and going through that process?
So luckily I shopped around universities. So for anybody who's thinking of maybe studying, I always look around like because some of the unis outside the big cities charge maybe like a third less. So
Wow.
I was offered one which was like 40,000, and I got one for 18. So the one that was 18,000 was at University of Wollongong. Back then I think it's obviously gone up probably now, but
Mm.
yeah, I studied in Wollongong, but I lived in Sydney. So I was down there
Wow.
most days.
Yeah, and that again would be expensive to live.
Yeah, and it's about an hour and 45 minutes on the train, but I lived on the train line to uni, so it was about half an hour
Oh,
closer to the
okay.
uni than it was, like, it's, well, 30 minutes outside Sydney, but an hour and a half to
Yes.
uni.
Yeah. And are you still
Yeah.
in Sydney now?
Yeah, so I've been here ever since. Even though I've keep on saying I've left.
Yeah, but so what part of Sydney are you in now?
So just outside Sydney, about 25 minutes by train, it's a little place called Meadowbank.
Yep.
Kind of nice on the river.
And do you think you'll ever like move somewhere else in Australia, or is Sydney your home now?
I always say that I'm going back home every year. Like it still never has really hit me that I'm like here for good. I don't know why. I think that's just part of being an expat. A lot of people struggle with that homesickness, like
Yeah.
comparing it to home. And I did do that for a long time. Now I'm in a zone where I want to be like, I mean, if I tell you the whole story, basically, I've come to sort of a point where I'm keen to live in multiple places throughout the year. And I
Yeah.
was only really able to do that by living in Australia and hopefully building my life from the last few
Mhm.
years financially. And so now I'm in that place where I just spent 6 months at home to spend time with my family, and now I'm back
Yeah.
here. So, I wouldn't say no to moving somewhere else in Australia, but like, I mean, there's way better places than Sydney. Like, and I will say the first to say that. Like, Sydney's great. I love it. There's so much to do, but there is also more beautiful places around Australia.
Yeah. So are you now sort of your future plan is to kind of live between Belfast and Australia if you can?
The goal is after 2025, yes, I would love to be able to live sort of like anywhere in Australia slash at home as well, like a couple of months of the year. Um,
Yeah.
building up to that, and that would be the dream goal, really.
I think that for a lot of people now, it's that kind of digital nomad life, isn't it? Where you can work from
Mm,
anywhere and be wherever suits you, which takes time, but if you put your mind to it, then it
yeah.
absolutely is doable, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of hopefully building. This sort of like thing that I'm building is to be able to do that and to be able to help people at the same time while I'm able to live my life the way I want. Because when I went
Yes.
back to the UK, I realized that like it was very, very difficult to live with the cost of living
Mm-hmm.
crisis. Um,
Yes.
I really find it difficult on a UK salary because I'm a teacher sort of by trade, obviously. And
Yeah.
my salary wasn't was just covering me, and I was a single person,
Mm.
so
Mm-hmm.
if I have kids or if I even have a mortgage, which I do, but someone else is paying it, but if I had to
Yes.
pay my own mortgage living there properly, I wouldn't even have enough money over to do things that I normally do, like go on holiday, eat, So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
it was very different, but it was an experience I needed to force me down this road.
Yeah, and I did want to talk about that because obviously I've been in the UK, back in the UK for like 10 years. So I did 2 years working holiday in Australia, and I've been back in the UK for, no, sorry, I think I've been back in the UK for 8 years. So it was 10 years ago that I was in Australia. And obviously I'm really fully aware that things would have changed a lot within that 8 year period that I've
Mm,
been back in the UK. Same as like you were saying, you came back to Belfast and there's lots of changes. Do you think that the changes that
yeah.
you've seen happening in Australia are as sort of vast as what we've seen in the UK since, I'd say it's probably since COVID that the changes
Yeah.
have been really noticeable?
Well, for one, the rent has really increased, like
Mm,
mortgages and all. Everybody's sort of under mortgage stress here, which is kind of forced rental prices to go up, and obviously the amount of people are still vast. So, it's
yeah,
kind of all over, and there's a lot of hate out there at the moment around not people coming to Australia, and it's the same in the
yeah,
UK. People are like annoyed that people are coming in because of the
mm-hmm,
cost of living. But I
yeah,
think overall, it's not just one country; it's everywhere. And
it
people
is.
force the blame on foreigners when actually
Mm-hmm,
it's the governments that are really the ones to blame for letting
yeah,
it get this way, for not doing something sooner. Um,
yes,
and unfortunately, we just have to live with it. And if you're wanting to change your life, you're going to have to do something, step out of your box. And the only way to
exactly.
step out of it is to potentially move countries.
Mm-hmm,
Like
yep,
I never would have, I would have never got to where I was without Australia. Like Australia really, one, saved my life, as I say a few times, but it also changed my whole life. Like I would never be
mm-hmm,
living the life I live without being here, because I'd be stuck in the
yep,
same, like if I go home now, everybody I knew are still doing the exact same thing that they did
yes,
13 years ago, um,
yep,
in the same job, and they have not grown as people. They're still
mm-hmm,
talking about the same sort of stuff, and
yeah,
I feel like I've not. I'm not that I'm better, I just feel like I've grown, and as a person,
yes.
I've seen the world. And I feel different, and it's hard to fit back into that box once you're out of it.
I think anyone listening that has lived abroad for any period of time will 100% resonate with that because it is that thing. If you have to break the cycle in order, like you say, step out of your comfort zone in order to grow. Because if you were to stay in the same place, you do just end up, it's just normal life. You just get swept up in it and it's what people know. So you just continue sort of that
Mm,
cycle. But I do think
yeah,
stepping out and living somewhere new, you meet people that you would never meet in your hometown. You know, I think Australia does provide a level of opportunity that you don't quite get in the UK. I do wonder whether that opportunity is like minimizing now with, like you say, the stresses and pressure that every country is now under. Is Australia maybe now suffering a bit more like the rest of the world, whereas before they didn't seem to be as affected by world events?
I think so.
The people having issues with immigration and things like that, because I see that a lot online, on people's
Mm,
videos and things, that people are saying we don't want immigration, we don't have enough housing here for people that live
mhm.
here already. um so are you noticing that on the ground as well, that is people's perception?
Yeah, pretty much. Like obviously the foreigners, the ones that come in and like are moving here or have got visas or all, they are just happy to be here. They don't seem to obviously care about immigration, obviously. Obviously everybody's scared about the house prices because it is
Mm,
unlivable in some of the cities. Which leads
yeah,
me to a lot of people are moving away from the bigger cities to smaller coastal towns.
yeah.
Other cities such as Perth is becoming a big hub for people,
Mm,
but with that brings problems with jobs as well. You know, so a lot of people that I know through the page are have been not as successful as getting as many jobs as what they once were. Certain sectors are booming and then certain sectors are shrinking. So, um, it swings and roundabouts, I think, in general anyway. And right now we're at that phase where people are a bit on edge and they are a bit
yeah.
they're pissed off really.
I think it depends on the type of person you are, because I'm the kind of person
Mm,
that's like, I will make an opportunity. If for whatever reason I was coming over and a salaried job wasn't what I needed it to be or what I wanted it to be, you can make your own opportunity. So I do think that sometimes you have kind of got to take action yourself rather than expecting things just to happen for you. I want to speak about Average Joe Down Under, and I'm guessing that is kind of your goal, is to grow that and that to be your um I guess, income. I'm assuming that you want to kind of grow your page and your community.
yeah, well, the idea is to help as many people as possible. There was no resources when I moved, obviously, 13 years ago. Everything had to be Googled. If you had Google, it was just like
Yeah,
everything had to be found, and it was hard. Um, but I also want to make like a sort of a page where like you can find things to do in the local area, like overseas, world travel, like just everything. Um, Obviously there's no paid products there, it's all free for everybody.
yeah.
Obviously the ads make a little bit of money, and my goal is just to have that grow and have visitors come every day. Money wise, I would love it if it made money. But at this point I could just see it, people, as long as people got something from it, I'd be really happy.
And it is so helpful because I found your page, as I started my migration journey, and just seeing your content, and I think your guides and everything on your website, your blogs, is so, so helpful. And I think even more so to maybe people that have never been before, just having a real person there rather than a business to give advice and guidance
Yeah.
is invaluable. So I'm sure that you have helped hundreds of people already. But how did this kind of idea of Average Joe come about?
Um, yeah, good question. I feel like my whole life I felt average. Like I just felt like I was never going to do anything worthwhile. And I really wanted to help people in general. But then I found my calling in as in my teaching career, where I work with special needs kids, and that really fulfilled me. But obviously, my passion is like I love on the side is to travel, and
Mm,
obviously to help people travel, like help them move potentially to Australia, or even just give them some sort of guidance would be like amazing. But yeah, I just felt super like, like I need to do something with my life, like, and leave something for people and in my own wee space on the internet. And yeah, and then obviously moving to Australia, I didn't feel average anymore. I felt like I was actually obviously more than average. I
yeah.
kind of brought it out to me, so that's sort of where the name came from. Obviously, I'm not Joe, but it just felt right at that time, and it just sort of was born out of that idea where, like, I wish someone had some resources in one place that I could look at that were
Yes.
not just like government websites.
Yeah, it's that personal touch that people want and people need, I think. And is do you find it hard doing that on the side of working in a like conventional job?
Very much so. Very
It's
much so. Like I probably put in a lot of time.
how do you sort of cope with balancing the two?
Well, I guess I've sort of outsourced a little bit of the stuff, so I know what I want to write about, and I maybe get someone
Hmm.
to help me do that process because obviously I can't write a million articles while I'm working a full-time job. Like,
Yeah,
but I do write obviously when I'm off on holidays. I make sure everything's personally touched by me, like make sure that the articles sound like okay, I've done this because I'm talking about my experience. But
yes,
obviously, like they don't like people don't see the cost where it costs to like you have to have a subscription for your podcast to go on. You have to pay for
yeah,
the mics. You have to pay for the laptops, and you have to pay for writers. You have to pay for your website to be kept around. Like there is a lot of
yes,
costs that go into it, but the idea was to get it to a point where it was self-sufficient. Like even those costs were covered, I would be happy.
yeah,
That's that's what the idea of it would be great. But obviously, if we don't get there, then it is what it is. But if the resources are there for people to really make use of, because I mean, if someone had told me, like when I was, because I'm a teacher, um, but if someone told me at uni, you can make X amount of money if you work in boarding, and I was like, what's boarding? And then I discovered boarding when a few years later down the line, and I was like, I can make that much money. Like there was no concept of that at home. Like I would have been stuck on the same salary with no progression because people stayed in their jobs for
mm,
25 years.
hmm,
Um,
yes,
so there's no talk about people moving. Whereas here, everybody was like, "Oh, in 2 years, if you don't jump and get a higher salary, then you need to do this, this, and this." And I was like, "Oh, like there was so many ways to like help yourself here." Whereas
yes,
there was nothing. So I feel like I just try to put out content that relates to me, that like maybe stories that people can relate to and help, that they're
yeah.
going through dark times or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so, so important for people going through because this is like life. This is probably, if someone's immigrating, it's one of the biggest things you can do, isn't it? What are your future plans for Average Joe Down Under?
I would love to really just obviously increase the amount of blogs that are on the website just to give people options, and not it's not just Sydney, it's like everywhere I've been, because I've pretty much been to near enough every single state now apart from one
Yeah,
territory. But like there's things to do what I did, or like even just traveling the world, because there's places I've been to and I think to myself like wouldn't have got here without Australia. So like if someone was able to do it cheaply, like if there's a few articles on like earning points to be able to travel Australia, because like I spent so many years not knowing these like tricks and things that people could do,
yes,
and then all of a sudden I find them. I'm like, why did I not know this? Like, so now I'm just
yeah.
literally telling people you should do this because it saves money.
So let's touch on that a bit because I've seen that on your Instagram and I'm like, I definitely need to. I've saved a few of your posts about it because I'm like, I need to remember all this when I arrive. So obviously
Yeah.
collecting points for air miles, but you can do that in quite a few different ways in Australia. I think more so than what you can in the UK. So how have you been doing that in
Yeah.
Australia?
Well, I just started really like I kind of knew about it from a friend. Again, like, it's of just people you hear stuff, and then I started following a bunch of pages and realized that why am I not doing this? Like, why have I not been doing this for the
Yeah.
13 years? I would have been flying for free. Um, so now I just sort of do it like you can do it via credit cards, your shopping. Like people always say, oh, just stay clear of credit cards, because that was my big thing in the UK, is like never get a credit card. Like my family do not get a credit card. Like it was
Yes.
just like do not put yourself into more debt than you already are. But
Yeah.
the way I see it is it's good debt. It's good debt because you're buying something that you literally pay off straight away. Like for example, I'm
Yeah.
buying a new fridge and a freezer or whatever. Then I get miles for signing up to that credit card, which then I'm able to redeem for a flight later on.
Is it like Qantas points or are you just collecting points that you can transfer to any airline?
So you can do a mixture of a few things. So there's like
Mm.
Amex, Qantas. and Velocity. Amex you can change to a bunch of different airlines if you get the right card.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily collect Velocity, but I know people who do both. Unfortunately, I just don't spend enough money to warrant to do both. And Qantas
Yeah.
flies all the routes that I near enough want, or their partners
Mm-hmm.
do. I
Yeah.
usually go to the US, UK, or like either in Australia. So, and I mean, I got to Perth from Sydney, which is usually a ticket around $6,800 for
Wow.
I think it was like maybe 200. So it was 200 return. Yes, it was slightly longer. I had to go to Brisbane then Perth, but I would rather pay a lot less and have that money for spending money or a hotel
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
else. But you have to spend the money though. That's the thing. You have to really spend the money
Yeah.
in the shopping. You can do it via you're like anything you sign up to, you just sign up for the ones. As long as it's saving you money and it's not costing you money, that's when you really should look at it. Like if you're spending money that you
Yes.
don't have and you don't need to spend, don't do it. Like I always say,
Yeah.
don't. It's not financial advice, by the way.
And how do you cope with the homesickness? Because that is such a big thing for so many people, and I've seen quite a lot of people, mainly on TikTok, that have moved over to Australia and ended up leaving after, within the year period, mainly because of being homesick. What advice do you give to people to help with that?
Well, first of all, I'd say make sure you know if it is actually homesickness or whether you don't want to be in Australia or whether it's the situation you're in.
Mm,
Because I think, a few of my friends have left as well, and a few of them was situational. It wasn't. It was like they were in a bad relationship or they were really missing their family, and they were like, there's other sort of things happening in their lives, personal lives. But if
yeah.
you are really truly homesickness sick and you know it, start to reach like don't get to the point where you're spiraling down the homesickness route. Like know that you want to be here, and if you do want to be here, then do things to change it. Don't just sit
Mm,
in and say no, because that's what I did. I refused to go out. I was crying nonstop for like days on end. Then I'd be fine. I would say
yeah.
no to events when people asked me out, even though that was what I wanted. And it was just, I think it was a combination of things for me personally. But if you're truly homesickness, if you're truly homesick, there is so many avenues to reach out to here, especially mental health, sort of just in general services. And it
Yeah.
sometimes is good just to tell someone as well, like you're feeling homesick. Can we do something? Because I think
Yeah.
people don't communicate very well when they are. So if you tell someone I'm feeling very homesick, I would like to do X, Y, and Z, that tends to help because you're actually
Mm,
like you're sharing your burden with someone else. um and also just even just like stepping out of your comfort zone, knowing that you are homesick and do something about it.
yeah.
I didn't for a long time, and then when I actually got into therapy and for all these other things as well, I realized that like actually was never homesick. I think it was just lonely. So
Yes.
I guess there's just there's so many avenues to lead you to homesickness. But yeah, I have a few articles up there about homesickness as well and about where you can go if you need to get some help as well.
Oh, amazing. Because I think naturally it is something that's going to happen on and off. But I think it's like you say,
Oh yeah.
how long are those periods lasting for? I think typically, it might last a few days and then you feel okay. But if it's lasting for a longer time, I think it is that thing of a problem shared is a problem halved. So like you say, talking to someone about it
Yeah.
really will help. And have you found a lot of your friends that you've made, are they expats as well?
I made a sort of a decision when I came that I wanted to assimilate as much as possible, because if I stayed with my own people or like people that I knew from home or whatever that came out as well, I felt that I was already struggling. If I kind of stuck with them, I think I would be more pulled to home because a lot of them have
Yes.
left. Um, but I kind of just got into it and was like, I'm going to make some new friends and stepped out of like my friends like circle,
Yes.
which really helped, I guess, too. Um, but a lot of the other people that I've kind of know here, I guess, are mixture. That like I would never have met someone from Iraq or someone from Eastern Europe or whatever in Belfast. So it was
Yes.
really nice and refreshing to hear someone else. Like I've got friends from Armenia, from all these all different places. Like So it was just it's such a warming sort of feeling when all these other people are expats and they're all feeling exactly the same as you. They're all coming from their home countries and they're feeling the exact same way that you're feeling, lonely, sad, missing their families, but they know that this is the right opportunity for them and it will change their
Yeah.
lives.
So just
Yeah.
finally, what key advice would you give to anyone that is moving to Australia?
First thing is go for your dreams. Never tell anybody that you can't do anything, and anything that all the things that limit you is always yourself and fear, and just do it because you will always regret not doing something that you really love and want. I have like regretted not doing a bunch of stuff in my life, and those were all like obviously it was never travel or whatever or moving to Australia, but it was like stuff with business. And I always think to myself, like, why did I not just do it? And so if you're thinking about coming or going to another country or wherever you're thinking about doing, just go and do it. Even if you fail, you did it, you tried, you give it a go. Um, but practical advice, I would say, bring more money than you think that you're going to need, especially if you want to travel. It is a bit more expensive than you think, but saying that, I found the UK, like eating out was a lot more expensive than it was to eat
Mm,
out in Australia and still is. So,
yeah,
I mean, there's certain things that are cheaper and more expensive. I would say rent is super expensive, but you can find cheap accommodation in places. You can find cheap food.
yeah,
So just look out for the deals as well. Be aware of your budget. Don't go over. That's a big one.
yes, yeah. That's a good one. Is make sure you have enough money to support you until you do
Yeah.
get a bit more set up.
I think
Oh
the
well,
government say 5,000 Australian, which I laugh at every time because I'm like, if you plan to travel and like just get accommodation in your first place, like you're talking a big chunk of your budget gone straight away. So
yes,
if you
yeah,
plan to have more than that, that would be ideal. Obviously, if you're planning to come to work straight away, making sure you have that paperwork. Like, do not leave your transcripts from your uni if you're coming over to do, like, even if you're coming on working holiday, you can still do things like teaching. You can do like whatever you're trained in, you can still do here. You just have to bring all that information with you. So don't forget that
yes,
stuff because that is, if you don't, obviously if you're that never went to uni, don't worry about those types of things. But if you are, bring all that stuff. You do need it. Paperwork's important.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so
No.
much, Darren, for coming on. I think that's been so helpful just to hear your perspective, and also how you can help people. So I will include it obviously in the show notes, but where can people find you? Because I'm sure there'll be lots of people now that want to go onto your website and look at your blogs, and find you on social media.
Yeah. So that right now there's about 60 blogs coming in the month of July and August. So keep an eye out. So just if you do go on there and you see like there's not much, they're still in the process. But you can find me at darrenjonathan.com, or you can just Google Average Joe Down Under and it'll take you to the website. Otherwise, you can find me on Instagram or TikTok at Average Joe Down Under. TikTok's still in the process, so Instagram is where you'll probably get me if you need me. But yeah, you can find me there, and you can look at any of this information I have, and hopefully, it helps someone achieve your dreams, no matter where you are.
Oh, thank you so much. That was such a helpful conversation. And thank you again just for all the content that you create, because it is so valuable, and it definitely has helped me throughout my journey. So I know that it would have helped, other people that are listening as well.